Welcome. Today, we're going to be discussing a topic that actually pertains to every single person on Earth, life beyond life. And this is a topic that is central to the work of some of our evolutionary leaders, and I think of deep interest to many. So I'm really, really excited that we have on this call today, we have Anita Moorjani and Dr. Eben Alexander, Diane Williams, and you'll find out more about her than you know, and Karen Noe. So what will happen is we'll have each of our presenters talk for about 10 minutes, and then we'll have a group conversation, and we'll just share about any other experiences or questions that we might have about this topic, which I know is just so vast that we could talk about it for a long time, but we're going to stick to a 90-minute call today. So I just want to really thank the four of you who are offering your experiences today, because I know that this touches something very deep in you. It changed your lives, and very deep in all of us. And most of the evolutionary leaders know the experiences of Anita and Eben because we've read your books. So I think today what would be really most interesting to us is to really have, feel free to remind us what happened to you, but really to speak from your heart about how you feel that these experiences inform the new paradigm that we're all stepping into together. So we're going to be really fascinated to hear from you. We're going to start with Anita Moorjani. So welcome. Thank you for being with us.
Oh, wow. Wow. Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. And my near-death experience happened in 2006 as a result of end-stage cancer, when I went into a coma and the doctors told my family I wasn't coming back. And of course, many of you have already read my book or watched my videos or heard me speak. So you know about some of the details, or many of the details of what actually happened, where, of course, I realized that we are much more than physical beings. And I learned when I was on the other side that it was not my time to die, and that I still had a purpose that had not been fulfilled yet. I just learned so much. I encountered the essence or the soul of my deceased dad. My dad, during my lifetime, during my life when I was growing up, my dad had always instilled fear in me. And one of the things I learned while I was in the near-death experience was that it was my many, many fears that had contributed to my body actually getting sick to the point of dying, because I was afraid of everything. I was afraid of not being good enough. I was afraid of disappointing people. I was a people pleaser. I was a doormat. I was also afraid of illness. And what I didn't know at that time, which I have come to realize much later in life, is that I was an empath, which means I felt emotions extremely strongly, viscerally in my body. And as an empath, if you don't realize it, and it was something that we didn't even know about, I think 10, 15, 20 years ago. And I've come to realize that if you are highly sensitive, your body actually does feel physical pain, but it takes it on, and you can actually develop illnesses because you feel things so deeply. And when you understand that, you can work with that. But of course, I didn't understand that back then. So all of these things, taking on stuff from my dad and taking on fears and being super sensitive, contributed to me being sick. While I was on the other side, I understood why I got sick. I understood why I had the cancer. And I understood that if I chose to come back here into the physical body, and back into my physical body, that the cancer would heal, because I now understood what had caused it. But it was so beautiful on the other side that at first I didn't want to come back. But my dad reminded me that I had a purpose to fulfill, which I had not yet fulfilled. And I was also reminded that there were some gifts waiting for me on this side. So when I came back, so I came out of the coma about 30 hours later, and my body healed very, very quickly, and the doctors could not explain it. One of the things that I feel it's important to know, you know, as per the question, that could help us and inform us in our current paradigm is my current message that I want people to have or to take away is that one of the biggest discoveries for me is how much power and control we actually have over our lives. I realized, and without trying to blame anybody who is dealing with an illness, I realized that I had caused my own cancer. I had caused my own my own illness, and it was me that had taken my life up to that point of lying there in that hospital bed dying, and I could have died. I realized from that perspective how much autonomy we have over our lives, and that we truly are at every moment creating, or at the very minimum co-creating our lives. We are not victims of our lives. And why this is important to know, and the second thing I realized actually is that I realized that I matter, that my life actually matters in the grand scheme of things. We all do, every single person does, but we don't realize it. And why this is important right now is because we live in a world of really loud voices in media, social media, mass media, governments, and just really loud voices out there. And there's a common theme that all these loud voices have, that the mass media have, that the government has. The common theme is that of fear, and that we are victims of our circumstances. All day long, every day, we are being told that you are, you know, that you're basically a victim of these current situations we're in, and we could die if we don't do this, and you're going to die, and you're going to get COVID, and you're going to, but that's been the theme even before the pandemic. What I would like people to know is that we are not victims of our circumstances. We create our circumstances. We create our lives. It's more important now for people to know that, because the more we buy into, which is what I did up to the point of my death, the more I bought into the paradigm, the weaker I got, the more I believed I was a victim. And the weaker my body gets, the more I surrender myself to the loudest voices here in the physical. Whereas when I died, I realized that I have a direct connection with the non-physical. We all do. We all have our own purpose. We all have our own our own soul that has come here for a reason. We all have our own autonomy over our lives. We are not victims of these circumstances, and we are not at the mercy of what all these loudest voices are trying to tell us or make me believe. That's what I would want people to know. My current message is for people who are aware that they are more than physical beings, people who are sensitive, people who are empaths, people who know that we are spiritual beings, for people like that to please stand up and speak and to please take on more leadership roles. Because if you don't like the state of our current world, it's because people who are sensitive have always taken a back seat. They've always bowed down and let the louder and more aggressive voices among us take on the leadership roles. Just because somebody is loud doesn't mean they are right. So the people who are the more sensitive, who are the more in touch with other worlds, who know there's something more, unfortunately, we are not the mainstream. We are not the loudest voices. We're the ones who are being made to feel that we're woo-woo, we're delusional, we're crazy. So my current message for this paradigm is to try and get us to make that shift where more of us can kind of stand up and say, hey, wait a minute. This isn't woo-woo. Near-death experiences aren't woo-woo. We are spiritual beings. We do have autonomy over our lives. Our life and death isn't controlled by the media and everything that they try to tell us. So that's kind of my message of late.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Anita. And before we move on, I'd like to ask you a quick question.
Of course.
So in Dying to Be Me, you speak about the miraculous healing that took place in your body when you came back into it. And I'm very curious about what you feel was the mechanism for that. And is there a way to access that mechanism without leaving the body to discover it?
Absolutely. And that's why I share my message. I don't want people to feel that they have to die in order to heal. What I believe, and this is pretty provocative or controversial, is what I truly believe is that illness has been completely misunderstood. I believe that everything that goes wrong with our bodies are to do either with injury or emotional trauma or toxic overload. So that means everything is it's explainable. Everything is explainable by these three things. It basically breaks down to these three things. And so everything is reversible. Of course, injury, that's when you need intervention. And I also believe that, unfortunately, because the medical paradigm is so powerful, that we have been led to believe it starts with the way the paradigm works, where we are constantly being led to believe that we are vulnerable and that every time our bodies show any symptoms, it's because we're sick and we need to go and get drugs. We need to see a doctor. In actuality, we have it the other way around. When our body is showing symptoms, it's actually being really smart and it's trying to tell us something. So one thing that you will not learn in medicine is what is your body trying to tell you when it has the symptoms. Your body is always telling you something, and sometimes it could just be telling you something like slow down or you need to rest. It could be something as simple as that, to slow down or you need to rest. What I wish would happen in our medical paradigm, and this is where I say that I truly believe that people can reverse their illnesses, because if I came back from the stage where I was at, by the way, I weighed 85 pounds, my organs had stopped functioning. I had open skin lesions. My muscles had completely deteriorated. I could not walk. My lungs were filled with fluid. So when I lay flat, I would choke on my own fluid. And I was in a coma, and the doctors said I was not coming back. If I can come back from that state, anybody can come back. And I came back because I realized that I matter, that my soul was not ready to go. So what I tell people, and what I wish was more common in the medical paradigm, is where where patients, where people who are sick could be asked questions like, have you suffered a trauma recently? Are you lonely? Do you have people in your life who love you? Do you have people in your life who you love? Has your life got meaning and purpose? Do you look forward to the rest of your life? And if people could work through those things and had a reason to live, they would live longer. I truly believe that the entire paradigm of health and wellness needs to be turned on its head. And we have to stop looking at illness as an illness that's something to be treated with pharmaceuticals. We have to start seeing it as our body's wisdom communicating with us. And once we start seeing our symptoms as a sickness, we go down that slippery slope of going to the doctor and getting pharmaceuticals and having somebody plant thought viruses in us and say, okay, you're now getting older, these things happen, so now let's get you on more and more medication. It's a whole paradigm shift. And it's not anybody's fault. It's not even the medical doctor's fault. I've met many lovely medical doctors, including Dr. Eben Alexander, who is now, of course, one of us, and many medical doctors have said to me that what you're saying is so true, but this paradigm is so big that it's very hard to change it. But there are many medical doctors who would agree that really it is your passion, your desire to live, and things like that. And of course, nutrition and taking care of your body plays a part. But I always say it's your desire to live and your love of life and your love for yourself and your passion that is first and foremost, because it's when that is in place that you even start to take care of your body. And if I can, oh, you're so welcome. And if I can just say,
this is very, very inspiring, Anita. Thank you so much. And
you're so welcome. And if I may just say one more thing, is that very often we believe that if we just go and see a naturopath as opposed to a medical doctor, we're doing okay. But one of the things I tell my audience is that choose your naturopaths, because even a naturopath can be very illness focused and have the same mindset of, oh, we have to eradicate that illness. Let's see what stuff we can pile on to you to do that. My point is you have to change your mindset and always know that your body is not the enemy. Your body is not the enemy. It's not trying to bring you down. It's not trying to fight you. It's about turning inward and saying, what is my body trying to tell me? And then going with that. It's that. So, yeah. So thank you for that time to explain that.
Very powerful. Thank you, Anita. And how appropriate that our next discussion leader is a medical doctor. So we're going to hear from Dr. Eben Alexander, author of Proof of Heaven. And it's so interesting, Eben, because you've been living on both sides of this equation, as well as having an experience on the other side of this reality. So we're looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Well, Deborah, thank you so much. And Anita, it's so beautiful to hear you. Just absolutely right on the beam. And I especially love hearing all that as a physician, as a healer. I've learned a lot in the 13 years since my coma experience. And for those who don't know, I had spent 54 years of my life honing a very scientific worldview as a neurosurgeon. Taught at Harvard Medical School for 15 years. Thought I understood something about brain, mind, and consciousness. But that's when I got that tremendous shocker back in November 2008, when I went into deep coma due to a severe case of gram-negative bacterial meningoencephalitis. And it's the greatest gift of my life. I mean, it's extraordinary that as a physician, I can sit here and say that the biggest blessing I ever went through was a disease that by all rights should have killed me. And yet it really opened my eyes in a beautiful way. And you're right, Deborah, I thoroughly enjoy the fact that not only am I an experiencer and having, shared my story of proof of heaven and gone out and given talks and um, conferences, all that around the world, um, that's all as an experiencer. Um, and that, what it does for me is it enables others to tell their stories to me. And I've heard from thousands of people. And that's what, to me, has been such an incredible gift. I mean, when people ask me, was it worth it to share your story and kind of threaten your career and a profession like that? And I would say, absolutely. I wouldn't trade it for the world. And I came back to this world understanding, as Anita says, each and every one of us is an absolutely crucial kind of element of this awakening of humanity. Humanity has wandered into some very dark and kind of misleading cul-de-sacs in trying to understand the nature of our existence. And this is something where other experiencers certainly can help to share that beautiful message. And as has already been said today, you don't need to have an NDE to get the tremendous benefits. I would say there are two ingredients that can give you these benefits. One is, for one thing, just to familiarize yourself with these stories. I mean, to hear Anita's story, to hear of, say, Mary C. Neal, the orthopedic surgeon who wrote the book To Heaven and Back and had a profound kayaking accident, over 30-minute warm water drowning in Chile in the late 90s. To come back from that is an absolute miracle. Anita's return is a miracle. In fact, if her doctors could have claimed credit for it through any treatment they'd given, they would have published it everywhere. But then how come this very different attitude of when you come back and show them, my cancer's gone, I know it. And then they start scanning you and they should be happy as can be over your result and listen to how in the world do you think you accomplished this? And yet that's not necessarily their response. And that's where I think the medical profession is slowly waking up to all this. Now, that was the first ingredient I mentioned, was for other people to just know of these kind of experiences, to know what's possible for human beings. But then the second part is to realize that it's all about a connection and about the power that we have through the will of our soul. And that involves going within, realizing our ego voice, that little voice in the head. I was very used to that little voice in my head telling me that's who I was. But that's not true. I love how Michael Singer puts it in his book, The Untethered Soul. He talks about that voice in the head, the running stream of consciousness, which so many of us identify as who we are. He calls that the annoying roommate. Absolutely correct. That is an annoying roommate and it can get you into tons of trouble. I know from my own work in addiction and alcoholism work that the ego voice it can kill you. In fact, the ego would much rather, in a case of bad addiction, would much rather see the host dead than to see its little ego mind dead. And that's why it's often important to have a ritual sacrifice of that ego so that you can emerge kind of reborn as a healthier soul. And that healthier soul is one that appreciates, just as Anita came to learn, as I came to learn, that we are deeply loved by the universe. Now, those who've read Proof of Heaven will realize that there was a little struggle going on in my world that had been there my whole life. It had to do with the fact that I was adopted. My birth mother was a 16-year-old high school sophomore. My father was a senior. They weren't married. And there was really no way for them to get together. So it was the best thing for them to do to give me up at age 11 days. Now, I didn't know that. I didn't know why I was left behind. And my father, who was an academic neurosurgeon, used to tell me, you can't possibly remember anything that happened when you were that young, days old, weeks old. But I'm convinced now that I did remember it. And in fact, it kind of colored my entire relationship with the world. And in many ways, did not feel worthy of love. And I'd say there are many reasons that people can have that kind of an abandonment wound from youth. Adoption is one way. And don't get me wrong, I couldn't have been more fortunate. I was adopted into a wonderful, loving family. I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better family. But deep inside, there was this memory of having been left behind, given up because I wasn't worthy of being with my mother. And I stopped eating. I was hospitalized for failure to thrive. And so in many ways, my NDE so many years later, when I was 54, and I'm now 13 years beyond it, trying to make sense of it all, but it was an absolutely crucial part of my life. And like so many of us, I would say in many ways, by being physical beings, we all have an abandonment wound. We all come into this world from the heavenly realm, and we might feel kind of abandoned. And in fact, our life journey is really to rediscover that connection of oneness, of a sense of belonging in this universe, a sense that our fellow beings are like deep family, that we're all spiritual beings that are in this beautiful journey together. And that is a tremendous gift. But as Anita pointed out, the dominant loud voices in our culture, what I will do is, as a scientist who was formerly a reductive materialist neuroscientist, believing the brain creates consciousness, I will fault, the rest of my kin that kind of followed that mode of thinking. And so this is really important to understand, that these journeys show us a tremendous amount about our ability to influence our world. Now, as a physician, I'm very familiar with the concept of placebo effect. Placebo effect is nothing more than an admission by medical science over the last 6 decades that beliefs, thoughts, attitudes play a crucial role in healing. And I would say healing means to become more whole, become more of the souls we came to this world to be. And that's where I think the possibilities that come from just acknowledging placebo effect, and then realizing that in extreme cases, you can have the kind of healing that I benefited from. And you can go beyond proof of heaven, read the case report on my medical records. You can access that at ebenalexander.com in a blog posting that I put up back in September 2018. There's a case report published in the peer-reviewed medical literature by 3 doctors who were not involved in my care, but were absolutely fascinated by my recovery. And in fact, they even strengthened the argument I made in Proof of Heaven that my brain was in no shape to have any kind of dream or hallucination at all. That's one of the reasons why my case is so important to the scientific literature, and especially to neuroscience. Because for me to have any kind of conscious awareness at all, when I had such well-documented damage of my neocortex, I should have been able to dream or hallucinate nothing at all with that degree of brain damage, according to modern neuroscience. And yet I had the most prolific, detailed, vibrant, alive, rich, memorable, and meaningful set of events of my entire life, all when my brain was very demonstrably shut down. Now, it turns out that in the science of consciousness that is emerging now, based on not only NDEs and shared death experiences, after-death communications, deathbed visions, but also in things like past life memories in children, indicative of reincarnation. More than 2,500 cases have been investigated by the group at UVA. And if you go to uvadops.org, you can learn a lot more about that work. But the reality is, modern science, especially this emerging science of consciousness, is wide open to the tremendous potentials we have as human beings to shape our emerging reality. And therefore, those loud voices that Anita talks about do not have to be the voices that lead us into the future. In fact, in many ways, this revolution of consciousness with near-death experiencers and other people who've had spiritually transformative experiences around the world, sharing all that in the setting of a very supportive scientific environment. Because I tell you, what is going to actually fuel this revolution, and it's a revolution people have sought for at least 5,000 years. In many ways, some of our greatest religious traditions, both East and West, have come close to the notions of oneness, connectedness, and kind of power of will that we have as these expanded beings that are much more than our physical bodies. And that is really where this revolution is headed. And it's why it's so important. I would say that materialist science, in many ways, has kind of falsely led us into this dangerous cul-de-sac of believing that we're separate beings, that we're not all in this together on kind of a shared mission, that the shared mission includes not only humans, but our animal and plant friends on this planet. There's a tremendous amount of life on Earth that is consolidating under this revolution in the understanding of consciousness that I think will completely change the agenda, and will realize that the military industrial complex and the medical industrial complex, in so many ways, these expanded forms of consumerism that when writ large, they're very dangerous and damaging to our world. That's where this revolution will make a tremendous difference. And the more individual human beings can realize they have power to contribute in ways that can influence their own health, their own future, and the future of all of humanity. And that's why I think this particular revolution is absolutely critical. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Eben. And I hope that you are speaking to physicians far and wide, because imagine how empowering it would be to people to be under the care of a physician who has this attitude and this worldview.
Well, that is very true. And the world is changing. I would like to point out, just addressing that particular question, there's a beautiful book called The Science of Near-Death Experiences by John C. Hager. And he is an ophthalmologist from Missouri who's written an incredible book on all of this. And of course, our third book, Living in a Mindful Universe, that I co-wrote with Karen Newell, that goes into tremendous detail about this revolution and about how it's actively happening now.
Very exciting. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, Anita had referenced people who are sensitive that have taken a back seat and not been in positions of power in a kind of a similar way. You all know Diane Williams very well as the founder of the Source of Synergy Foundation and the Evolutionary Leaders Circle, but she has not really had an opportunity in her life yet to share widely about the experiences that she has had with expanded consciousness. So we are going to give the floor to Diane to tell us a little bit about her experiences.
Thank you, Deborah, for inviting me to be part of this program. And many thanks to everyone for joining us, and much gratitude to Anita, Eben, and Karen for being with us today to share their amazing stories and to give us insight of life beyond life. So one of the first life beyond life experiences, and one of the earliest memories I can recall, was climbing out of my crib when I was about 2.5 years old and finding my mother to tell her, "Mom, there are people in my room again." Because a few minutes earlier, I saw once again a group of people standing by my crib looking at me very peacefully. So it was confusing to me why my mother's reaction was somewhat panicked when she answered, "What people?" And it was only much later on that I realized that these people that I was seeing from time to time were most likely from another dimension. And my guess is that they were my ancestors, non-local coworkers, and perhaps those that needed to be seen before moving on to the other realm. And what they and others continue to show me to this day is that there are other dimensions to reality that are very much present. And by communicating with them, they can confirm to us that life doesn't end when we take our last breath on earth, and that in fact, all sorts of expressions of life and realities are happening simultaneously everywhere. And they also showed me that we're never alone, that we can reach out to them at any time. So years later, when I was about 8 years old, I had a near-death experience when I was hit by a large wave in the ocean and nearly drowned. And while under the water, I saw my life flash in front of me, like I know many of you have seen. And I vividly remember seeing images of, for instance, my first communion that were in my recent past, as well as images of me in the future. And one image was of myself as a grown woman. And I recall thinking with wonder and fascination, "Oh, I'm a big girl there." I was really simply mesmerized at seeing these scenes of my life quickly flash in front of my eyes. And during this experience, there was no fear, no struggle, no surrounding noise, no resistance. What left the deepest impression on me is that while I was under the water, I experienced a sense of bliss and vibrancy, tranquility, and love that was indescribable, yet felt very familiar. And it was kind of like being with the most incredible presence of love. And I didn't feel like I was drowning because it felt like I was very much alive in a way that didn't seem to exist here on the earth plane. And this experience made me want to reassure others not to be afraid of death, as coming close to passing into the light was an extraordinarily beautiful experience. And during today's times, with a global pandemic, rapid climate changes, nuclear weapons still existing, being able to prove and provide hope about the continuity of life is needed now more than ever. And it's important that people that have had these near-death experiences, like Anita and Eben were saying, and others that had transcendental experiences, share them like we're doing today as widely as possible to offer the assurance to others that consciousness continues beyond the death of our earthly bodies. So after my near-death experience and other transcendental moments as a child, I noticed that my extrasensory abilities begin to strengthen, including having more experiences of seeing and communicating with those in other realms, having vivid past life memories, experiencing collapsing time and seeing matter as light, and also being able to see if somebody is pregnant before they can start to show on a physical plane. So I would see somebody's belly, flat, and then it would be pregnant, as well as having experiences of knowing when somebody is about to pass over, and often being able to communicate with family members, friends, and even strangers from a distance when they're in the process of passing or after they have passed. And I also noticed that while I was having many occurrences of precognition of future events, including 9/11 while I was living in New York City, and the 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake and tsunami in Asia, where I was actually supposed to be, but with this precognition, it prevented me from going. And I really wish there was a way I could have been able to prevent others from being there. And I often think about how these abilities can be used in a more targeted way to support the greater good. And I believe the answer lies in helping others to discover their innate abilities by the study, development, and use in partnership with these types of phenomenon. And I feel in my soul that if we could all strengthen our non-local capacities, we will increase our chances of surviving here on planet Earth. And using the example of the tsunami or recent floods, fires, and even the pandemic, if we were able to seriously study how precognition works and use it as an early warning signal by tapping into the knowing of those that could see or feel a tragedy before it happens, like the animals in the region of the tsunami, I think we all heard about that fled to safety several days prior to the event, the tragic loss of lives could be prevented. And I do believe that we all come to Earth equipped with these innate abilities. As Anita and Eben said, we don't have to nearly die to access them. We just have to work on allowing our cellular memory of who we are to come back, and to remember that we are multi-dimensional beings of light that are part of a cosmic field at the root of reality that holds, conserves, and conveys information. And this field also includes all of our loved ones, as Karen also knows so well. I'm sure she's going to be talking about that. And everyone that has passed over, as well as all other beings in the cosmos. And this field also holds all memory of our innate capacities that we can tap into at any time. And we can access this field through many ways, through silence, meditation, being in nature, expanding synergistic engagement, capacity building workshops, through heart-based conscious intention settings, or having a conversation with the living, intelligent, sentient cosmic field that connects us all, and requesting that it work more closely with us as a partner on our life's mission, or to support the healing of ourselves or another, or to simply connect with a loved one that has passed from this life to the next. And after these connections and conversations with the field, one will notice a lightness of being, because the field, as well as other realms, will work more closely with us and lighten our load. And we will be given more glimpses of consciousness outside of the physical spectrum and enter more expanded states of reality. And once in this state, all sorts of communications will happen, as I know many of you have, witnessed or experienced, including signs and synchronicities, intuitive knowing, and insights, including receiving revelations, sudden inspiration, dreams, and profound visions that could lead to new ideas and inventions that the world desperately needs right now. And since we're all connected in the cosmic field, we begin to see more clearly that our requests, thoughts, and everyday actions will have a ripple effect in the field, because cosmic connectivity means there are cosmic consequences. And we also hear about this from people that have had a life review during their near-death experience. Well, they don't experience any judgment. I know, Anita, you mentioned that in your book, about the actions they took in this lifetime. They are shown how their actions have affected others in the field. So sometimes the simplest actions can turn out to be the most important. For instance, in one life review, a woman saw when she bent down to admire lovingly and appreciate a beautiful flower that grew in harsh conditions. This was a highlight in her life review. And she realized that the true significance of sending love and appreciation to all creatures in creation. And then others saw the consequences of their negative actions and also saw a ripple effect. Like a man, I remember reading this many years ago, a man saw himself as a boy when he killed a mother bird with a slingshot, and had the sensation of being the baby birds in the nest and not being able to eat without their mother, or having her protection to save them from predators. So it's important to know from the depths of our souls that every thought we have, every word we say, and every action we take really matters. And sometimes the smallest acts of kindness, a prayer, or a heart-based intention can have profound, immeasurable effects that we may never see, but it will register in the field. And when each of us lives more consciously and lightly, the collective also advances and begins to become more conscious and light-filled. So I just want to close by saying that today's times are calling on us to activate our light power by lifting up ourselves and each other so that we could live happy and meaningful lives by taking ourselves less seriously, laughing more, living lightly on the earth, purchasing less material things, letting go of lower frequency thoughts and emotions and heavy burdens that we carry, and judgments and past hurts and fears and shame and the belief in limitations, so that we could be infused with higher light-filled frequencies to let our hearts lead the way. And there is an interesting scientifically controlled study about light by German researchers at the University of Kassel that confirms the power of our light. They've shown that our chests emit about 20 photons of light per second. Yet when someone is meditating on their heart center and sending love and light to others, it radiates at 100,000 photons per second. So that's 5,000 times more than we typically emit. And over 20 scientific studies in peer-reviewed academic journals have shown that when these photons are imbued with a loving and healing intention, especially when groups of meditators come together to send out good intentions, light, and love, their collective frequency and vibration rises to the point that they can literally change matter, heal disease, transform negative events, and see, feel, and experience what they couldn't before. And just in closing, we know when there's enough light power generated, the unconsciousness of the world begins to either dissolve or transmute to match the frequency of that light. So it's important to see each choice we make as an opportunity to further ignite this matrix of light, and thus set off many positive ripple effects in the cosmic field that connects us all. So thank you.
Thank you, Diane. That was really inspiring. I'm sure we all want to step right away into that higher frequency of light and love. Thank you. And Diane referenced that one of the abilities that her near-death experience had given to her was to be able to communicate with those who are in the process of passing or who have passed. So our next discussion leader, Karen Noe, is a psychic medium. And so that is, if you will, her life mission. So let's hear from Karen.
Hello, everybody. I love you so much, all of you, and I resonate so much with what everyone is saying. Just to give you a little background of what happened to me, I did not have a near-death experience. I was always psychic, even as a little girl. My friends used to say that I freaked them out. I was psychic, but I wasn't a psychic medium. But 25 years ago, I was going through a very difficult time in my life. And I sat at the edge of my bed and I just yelled at God. And I said, am I going to be okay? And with that, I saw a light that came towards me from the other side of the room. And my first response was, if you're not of God, please leave. Okay, now years later, I know everything is of God. And then I did not. But I said, and love and light. So it continued to come towards me and eventually enveloped me. And that at that time, the most incredible peace came over me that I can't even put into words, probably what you have experienced in your near-death experiences. I just started to cry. And at that time, I heard a voice, an audible voice that said, Lucia, Lucina, Bella, Lucia, Lucina. I don't know if there are any Italians here, but it means light, little light, beautiful little light. And I have since learned it was St. Francis of Assisi, who's been guiding and protecting me ever since. And those of you who have read any of my books, I've written 4 books, 3 are with Hay House. There's that St. Francis connection about the animals and love and peace and all of that. If you follow me on Facebook, it's always about the animals and oneness and peace and all of that. But I briefly wanted to say, I know I only have 10 minutes and I want to teach you all how to do this because it's not about Karen Noe. We all can do this, and I know this without a doubt. You know, everybody could play the piano if you have fingers and hands. You know, some people could play scales and other people could play great masterpieces, but everybody could play the piano. The same thing with connecting with deceased loved ones. That would take more than 10 minutes, but it's basically what Diane said is to raise your vibration. So it's more on par with the energy of who they are, which is only love and peace and their feeling of oneness and so forth, forgiveness, seeing through the other person's eyes and so forth. But let's fast forward after that experience with the light. I was a huge fan of Dr. Wayne Dyer, huge fan. I did not know him personally and I did not know his family. I went to his events and I read his books. And a series of synchronistic events connected me and his family. It was as if he was saying, go ahead, connect. And I am, Anita, I'm just like you. I feel I'm quiet. You know, I don't want to be in the spotlight and so forth. And let me just give you one of the examples. I went to an event in Orlando, an I Could Do It event to speak about life after death. And the day before that event, they were going to do a tribute to Dr. Dyer at Hay, with Hay House. You were probably there, Anita, yes? I think so. So we were sitting on a bus, the author bus, with the authors, Hay House authors, as well as Wayne Dyer's family, going from the hotel to the conference center. And I'm sitting on the bus. There's one seat available on the whole bus. It happens to be next to me. And in walks Serena Dyer, and she sits down next to me. Serena Dyer is Wayne Dyer's daughter. It was a very simple conversation. I said, oh, Serena, I'm so sorry to hear about your dad. Please know he truly is okay and he would want you to be too. Ask him to give you signs to let you know that he's with you. Ask him to come to you in a dream and wake you up after the dream. Have you had any of those kinds of, messages or signs? And she said, well, her sister Sage had a dream where she hugged her dad. Her dad was in the dream and she hugged him and felt his hairy arms. I said, oh my God, that's a true visitation. That's really him. And you're going to see he's loud. He's going to be coming through loudly and clearly to all of you and to the world. You mark my words. He's going to come, with signs and all of that. That was it. That was pretty much the first encounter. Went to the tribute. And I'm going to start to cry. So just bear with me whenever I share this. So when I'm ready to from the tribute, I'm ready to go back onto the author bus. And as I'm considering going back on the bus, I see all my favorite Hay House authors, including you, Anita, and
Thank you.
Wayne Dyer's family. And I'm saying to myself, I am so insignificant. I'm so insignificant. I'm not going on that bus. I'm insignificant. And I continued to say that. So I said, I'm going to walk to the hotel. And I had high heels on and I'm trying to walk. I hurt my feet. But as I'm saying to myself, I am so insignificant. I'm so insignificant. That's when I heard him for the first time. And he said loudly, get out of your own way. Get out of your own way. And I said, Wayne, is that you? I said, if it's you, how may I serve? And he said, you're already serving. I said, how may I serve more? So I continued to walk and I said, Wayne, if that's really you, you have to give me, I call it a without a doubt sign to let me know it's really you. So I walked back to the hotel room and I'm in the hotel room and something very itchy was inside of my shirt. I don't know. I reached in to see what it was and it was a sticker that somehow attached itself to my shirt. Now, I looked what the sticker said and in huge letters, it said W-E on it. I thought it meant Wayne, first letter, last letter. Little did I know it was so much more than that. And on the bottom of the sticker, it said Disney. So I had not been to Disney before that event. So I don't know how it got on my shirt. And all of a sudden I felt Wayne and he starts to laugh. Is that good enough? Well, I started to cry. I said, oh my gosh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for, that was it. So long story short, I went home to New Jersey and Sage Dyer, this would take hours to tell you all the events. It was just so many events. She contacted me via Facebook. Eventually we talked on the phone and he came through loud and clearly about things that only they would know, that Wayne and she would know. Eventually she decided to come to an appointment. She asked her mom, Marceline, Sky, her sister, and Serena to come with her. They were going to fly in from Florida, as well as Sage was going to come in from Manhattan to New Jersey to come to see me. So, okay, here comes my insignificance again. And I said, oh my God. Now, I've been doing this for years. I've been doing psychic readings. I'm booked for 2 years ahead of time, but I've never done a reading for Wayne Dyer's family. And I was a huge fan. No, I can't do this, So I said, Wayne, you better come through. And I'm yelling at him, right? I went for a walk with my dog. And as I'm walking my dog, I started to feel him again. And loudly, he was so excited to talk about the afterlife and so excited to talk about what he was experiencing. And he was so excited to talk about the we consciousness. That was the sticker, W-E, we consciousness. The interconnection of everyone and everything, and whatever we do to ourselves or another, it affects the whole. And he was going to join forces with a group consciousness called the We Guides. And they were going to give me 33 concepts of the we consciousness. 33 because it symbolizes spiritual enlightenment and the upliftment of all of mankind. It was going to continue to come through singularly for his family and friends, but as a group consciousness, as the we guide, similar to what Esther Hicks does with Abraham. So every time I went for a walk, he would give me more information and the we guides would come through and I'd type it in my computer. Well, the time came for the appointment. And as I'm on with the Dyers, and as I am driving to the appointment, a car cuts me off and it said Dyer 1 on it. I knew it was going to come through. Now, Wayne was loud in life, so you wouldn't expect anything different. When in my readings throughout all the years, if somebody was quiet in life, they're very quiet when they come through. They were funny, they come through and they give jokes. Wayne, he's loud, you know it. So he was loud and he just was and when I went to the appointment, he gave very specific messages to each one of his members of his family, things that I would never have known, and some things that we couldn't share. Serena and Sage have written a book called The Knowing, they talk about some of these experiences in their book. It's a really good book. And I have a book called We Consciousness that talks about most of this. But the next 2 years, let me just say this, I can't forget this. The next 2 years, he has 8 children as well as a wife. At least twice a week, he'd make me call them 6 o'clock in the morning, 12 noon, at night, whenever it was. call Serena now, call Tracy now. And I'm like, no, I can't. Call her now. And it would always be something very specific. For example, one of the messages, he said, call Serena now. And I'm making dinner. And I'm like, Wayne, could it wait? No, call her now. So I called Serena. She's not answering. I called Sage. I said, what is going on with Serena? You know, something very important. She goes, Karen, we're here in the delivery room. Serena's ready to push. I said, put her on the phone. So they gave her the phone, and Wayne said, Daddy's here. Daddy's here. So these are the types of messages that he gave. But the reason why I'm sharing this with you is that because of that, I think he did this, first of all, for his family and to understand there is life after death. I've been doing this for so many years. I know it without a doubt. And my wish is for you to know it too. But he also wanted to know when he came through with the we consciousness to understand that he truly was coming through. And when I said before, he talks about the oneness, and whatever we do to ourselves or another affects the whole. This oneness includes every person, every animal, all of nature, deceased loved ones, angels, and even members of other dimensions, other planets, and so forth. And he saw that in an instant after he passed. Now, we can all do this. We can all connect with our deceased loved ones. We can all connect with Wayne Dyer if you wish, or the angels. All we have to do is set the intention of connecting with them. Raise your vibration so it's more on par with who they are. They're only love and peace right now. So again, what Diane was saying, practice forgiveness, seeing through the eyes of others, eating more compassionately, so many things that we can do. And to understand, we can ask them to give us signs to let us know they're with us. They'll give us the sign. I call them without a doubt signs, something that normally wouldn't happen, such as a bird landing on you or a feather that circles you and you keep finding pennies, whatever it is. Ask them to come to you in a dream and to wake you up after the dream so you remember it, and so forth. It's not just what Karen Noe can do. It's not just what those who've had near-death experiences can do. It's what all of us can do. We just have to remember who we are. We all have God within us, and we have to remember that. We are all miracle workers, and the only difference between miracle workers and those who are not are that the miracle workers remember who they are, and that's it. And that's my message to all of you. You are a miracle worker. You can connect with everyone and everything. We are all one. We start with ourselves, as Anita said. We have to start with ourselves. If we don't show compassion and love to ourselves, we can't give it to anyone else. And we, you, me, and everyone else, can increase the vibration of the planet and resonate back to who we really are, which is God within us. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. How magnificent. Thank you so much for sharing with us. I'm sure we're all feeling that vibration just from listening to you. So thank you to our 4 beautiful discussion leaders. It was such a privilege to hear your sharing today, and from all of you who are on the call. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for participating, for showing up, for being part of this. And as we step into a very new paradigm together, let us do it with new understandings of how important the frequency that each of us radiates is in this world.